Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of the Money Pros. I'm Oliver Tutt, Certified Financial Planner Practitioner. I'm going to be your host for the next half hour as we talk about all the issues related to your money, how to make it, how to keep it, and hopefully how to help it grow. Let me give you an idea of what we're going to be covering in today's show. First up, Sallie Mae, the education lender, is out with their 10th annual survey on how parents pay for college. A subject near and dear to my heart, as I will explain even more further. But I wanted to share with you some of the statistics about where all the money is coming from to pay for these bills. Our special guest today is going to be Lynn Riley, attorney and partner with Cameron Mittleman, our estate planning pro. We're going to be talking about some of the biggest estate planning mistakes that people make and potentially some solutions to them. So we're going to go through that with Lynn. In our third segment, we're going to be talking about the rising cost of health care, but more importantly, how it might actually be affecting retirement benefits when it comes to what your employer is spending their money on. And then finally, we have a viewer question we're going to cover on home equity lines of credit. So we've got a lot to get to in today's show. Let's leap right into it. And first off, I want to talk about this survey that I just saw from Sallie Mae. So Sallie Mae is actually a private educational lender. Used to be a quasi-public organization, but now ostensibly a private lender, and they specialize in collegiate student loans. So they survey Americans, students as well as parents each year to find out how people are handling the massive cost of a college education. So this is their 10th annual report, and they did telephone interviews with 800 students as well as 800 parents to cover a variety of issues related to the funding of a college education. So let's talk about some of those numbers. We'll put up a slide and we'll go through some of the statistics that I thought were interesting. So the first one is that 35% of the cost of tuition is on average being funded by scholarships and grants. So this could be merit aid, this could be need-based aid, this could be an athletic scholarship or a variety of different things. But it is essentially discounts being offered to the student and the parent on behalf of the financial institution. So 35% on average of the cost is being covered by those things. Next up, 23% of the cost is being covered out of pocket by the parents. So when you think about that total tuition bill for the year, on average, parents are paying 23% of that out of pocket. Now, that out of pocket can contain one of two things. It can be out of your monthly cash flow, your paycheck, however you like to look at it, but also out of savings. But it's basically hard cash coming from the parents. Third, 19% of the cost is being covered by student borrowing. So this is loans taken out by the student to pay for their education. And finally, 11% of the cost is being covered by student income, which is on-campus employment, summer employment, things along those lines that the student is contributing to the cost. So let's talk about those numbers a little bit. Interestingly, the 23% out of pocket that's being paid by the parents is actually a decrease from 29% being paid for out of pocket just the year previously. So there's actually a decrease in the amount of money being paid out of pocket by parents, which raises the question, are parents becoming more price sensitive to the cost of a college education? It's actually the lowest percentage out of pocket since 2009. The difference, however, because college educations are not getting less expensive, the difference is being made up by increased student borrowing. Sallie Mae is seeing borrowing going from covering 13% of the tuition up to 19% of the tuition. So students are borrowing more and more money. Some other interesting statistics that I thought I would share. 9 out of 10 parents expect that their children will go to college, but only 4 out of 10 actually save for it. Now, that could be a variety of reasons, inability to save, but for a lot of people, it's simply procrastination. So that's an interesting statistic. And then finally, 69% said they eliminated some colleges based on price. So it raises the question of, are colleges, or at least some colleges, getting so expensive that people are actually scratching them off the list, recognizing that they simply can't afford to pay for them? So some interesting statistics from Sallie Mae on the cost of a college education. Up next, we're going to be talking to Lynn Riley, attorney and partner with Cameron Mittleman. We're going to be talking about big estate planning mistakes and how you can avoid them. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Money Pros. I'm joined now by our estate planning pro, Lynn Riley, attorney and partner with Cameron Mittleman. Great to see you again. Welcome back.
Same here. Happy to be here.
We've got a long list to get through, so we should jump right into it. So, we talk about biggest estate planning mistakes, and you gave me 8 of them. So there's a lot of mistakes that can be made.
I cut that list down.
I'm sure you've seen them all and then some. So actually, let's get to it. So we put together a slide. We're going to step through these one at a time and talk briefly about why they're mistakes, perhaps what people can do to address them. So let's put it up. And number 1, we have not having a plan at all. Now this would seem rather obvious, but this is the most common problem people have, right? Talk to us about this.
It is. Some people think that you have to be wealthy to have an estate plan. Not true. Unfortunately, all of us pass away. So the most important thing that you can do for your family is to have a thoughtful plan to make sure that your personal and financial affairs are properly handled in the event of your death. It's going to happen. And to also to think about what's going to happen in the event of your disability.
And you feel like a lot of people are simply under the impression that, oh, if I die, they'll all sort it out. Nothing bad's going to happen. It'll go to my wife or to my kids, and that's the way it's supposed to go.
Right. Well, if you don't have a plan, then rather than your wishes taking place, it happens in accordance with state law, which may not be in accordance with your wishes. So it's very important to have at least some plan in place.
All right, so let's talk about number 2, and this is sort of related, but this is for people that have done a plan, but they haven't really touched it for a while. And this I find to be very common. You talk to a lot of people that might have a will or something like that, but they don't update it. Why is this a problem? I got it done. Why do I have to think about it again?
Well, I mean, family things change. We have births, we have deaths, we have divorces, not only with your spouse sometimes, but with children. And so it's very important to update not only your estate plan, but beneficiary designations so that when you pass, your assets pass to those you intend to receive them. So in the event of divorce, if you don't update your beneficiary designation, you, I'm sure, don't want a former spouse to receive those assets. You may have remarried, or you may want children to receive them. So it's important to update your plan periodically. It's very important.
Things change, people change, laws change sometimes, so it's got to be updated. How often should it be updated? How often should people revisit it?
Well, I tell them, generally speaking, every 3 to 5 years, but if there's an event that happens, whether it be the birth of a child or the death of a spouse or child or the illness of a family member, that it's important to update your estate plan right then and there and not wait.
Next up is something that, we talk about this on the Money Pros all the time. So it's not our fault if people are making this mistake, but they think that estate planning has everything to do with them dying, but not them becoming disabled. So the next mistake is forgetting about disability.
Yes, it's very important to incorporate into your estate plan what's going to happen in the event of your incapacity. Who's going to make health care decisions for you? Who's going to manage your financial affairs on your behalf? Oftentimes it makes sense to also to have a trust in place, to have your assets held by your trust, and you control those assets. But in the event of an illness or your incapacity, you've designated who's going to manage those assets within the trust for your benefit and for the benefit of your family.
And this is a surprisingly common thing. I mean, disability ultimately is more common than death for people. So this is something that should be addressed first and foremost, I should think.
It always should be incorporated in the same plan. Disability, illness, incapacity, as well as death, all should be in a thoughtful estate plan.
All right, next up, there's a lot of role players in an estate plan. I don't mean the attorneys and the accountants and the financial planners, but the people that are in your life that are going to have to play a role in your estate plan. Picking the wrong people can be a problem. Who are these people, and why is picking the wrong ones a big mistake?
Okay, well, oftentimes you may think that a spouse or a child or other loved one is best suited to handle the affairs of your estate upon your death. But sometimes someone else is better suited who's not personally invested to objectively handle the demanding tasks of an executor or trustee, especially if you have any type of complex assets like business assets, or if you have any family dynamics where it might be a second spouse situation and you or your spouse may have children from a prior relationship, or you may want to avoid pitting one child against the other. So it may not be that a family member is the best person suited to be the executor of your estate or the trustee. So you have to give it some thought and just not have that knee-jerk reaction of naming a spouse or a child to handle your estate.
And in sitting in on a lot of estate planning meetings, I find that this is one of the things that the clients struggle with the most is, you lay out all these different roles. There might be trustees, people with powers of attorney, healthcare powers, things like that. They really wrestle over that a lot. So that's something that you really need to spend some time with.
And an experienced estate planning attorney can help you with that and tell them about what each person does in what role. You know, oftentimes it is a family member that's the best suited for a healthcare power of attorney. But if you have business assets, maybe you have your CPA or other professionals serve with a spouse or a child to help handle those assets with them and coordinate the plan with them. So.
And if you don't get it right, you're just going to create misery for other people, and your wishes may not get carried out the way you expected.
Right, and you also might have situations where you're setting up a situation, there might be fights amongst family members, so you really don't want to do that. Part of the plan is leaving everything seamless following your death or in the event of your incapacity.
So let's talk about the next one, number 5, which is something that I'm often guilty of, procrastinating. People just put stuff off. They know what they need to do, they don't do it. What's the problem here?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people don't like to think about death or incapacity, but
it's not the most cheering
it's not the most cheering
subject
subject in the world. But you have to think about it, because if you don't, you're really making it terribly difficult on your family. If you don't think about incapacity, they're going to be having to deal with expensive guardianship proceedings. If you don't have a basic estate plan, upon your death, the state decides under state law where your assets are distributed to amongst your family members, and it may not be in the proportions or the way that you would like. So it's very important to do this for your family.
And it's, I mean, you're not going to get the same satisfaction out of doing an estate plan that you might get out of a new car or something like that. But don't you find that once it's done, clients have a distinct sense of relief that they derive from it? That's the thing you derive the most joy out of, essentially, right?
Absolutely, and we put everything in a binder, so you have your beneficiary designations, your will, your estate plan, your powers of attorney, your trust, and they see it there and they just feel so relieved. And now they told their loved ones about it, and oh, I've done that, check. And they can go on to the next task that they have to do for the family.
They don't have to revisit it for 3 to 5 years,
right.
Potentially. And I think the other people that are often relieved, particularly adult kids, they say, oh, thank God Mom and Dad, did that. I'm glad it's out of the way. I'm glad I didn't necessarily have to drag them through it or have all those conversations with them. So it provides a lot of relief all the way around. So it's a good reason not to procrastinate. Number 6, now this is a good one. This is something that flies under people's radar screens all the time. Why is joint ownership a mistake?
Okay, well, oftentimes older people will put an adult child on the deed to their house or to one or more of their bank accounts, thinking that it's really just for convenience. But when they do that, they're losing control. So if you wanted to sell your residence, you're still going to have to get your child to, permission to sell the residence or to refinance, and you're exposing those assets to the creditors of the child. So if the adult child's in a car accident or gets a divorce, it could be subject to divorce proceedings. So it's not usually a good idea to put a child's name on the deed to a house or to even joint accounts. So if you put a child's name on one joint account and say another child's name on another joint account, it can lead to unintended consequences. So one child gets the bulk of your accounts and assets and another child gets very little, especially if, say, one child used those assets to take care of you before you pass away. So it's usually not a good idea. You can incorporate disability by using powers of attorney, having a financial power of attorney. Then you don't need to add the child's name to any deed or to any account. That's the way to do it, not necessarily to add a child's name to an account.
Kind of think of it a little bit like driving a nail with a sledgehammer. I mean, it's sort of a blunt tool, it'll work, but it's not the right way to do it, and it can cause a lot of damage.
It can cause a lot of problems, and it can cause a lot of unintended consequences and a lot of rifts between family members.
That's like I tell my kids, doing things right is not that hard, but it's worth the extra time. All right, number 7 on our list, not meeting with the pros. Now, here we are, we're the pros, right? Let's talk about that.
Well, I think it's important, if you're going to have an estate plan, to meet with an experienced estate planning attorney, not a general practitioner. The same reasoning would be as if you had to go in for heart surgery. You'd meet with a heart surgeon and not with a dentist. An experienced estate planning attorney can make sure that your plan is coordinated, that your life insurance and retirement beneficiary designations are coordinated with your will and your trust, so that your assets pass to your family in a way that best protects them, that minimizes all types of taxes, income, estate, and gift taxes, and so that your family is best protected and provides also in the event that a child or spouse is disabled or ill. So an experienced estate planning attorney can identify all of those issues. A general estate planning attorney, may not, and oftentimes don't.
And this is something that I talk to clients about all the time, and I don't think they realize that estate planning is a specialty, just like maybe being a divorce attorney or corporate attorney or real estate attorney is, and it's worth getting something. I think this is also true. I'll throw in a plug for financial advisors. You can cause a lot of damage as a financial advisor if you're not at least aware of the issues and go plunging forward without, knowing what some of the ramifications are. So certainly professional help is well advised. Last thing on our list, neglecting digital assets. I read this one, I'm like, I have no idea what this means, so I better check into this.
Yes, well, your digital assets basically is your data that you have control over. So your Facebook account, your Twitter account, digital currency, digital music that you have control over. So you need to think about what you want to happen with those assets upon your disability and your death. You should talk to your spouse and other loved ones, where your passwords are, what digital assets that you have. Under most states' law, your digital assets are real assets. So your financial power of attorney should specifically reference your digital assets and give your agent under the power of attorney control over them in the event of your incapacity.
Would this include things like social media accounts like LinkedIn or Facebook?
Absolutely, that's correct. That's correct.
So we have this digital footprint that we have to address now, which is getting back to updating your estate plan. This is a modern thing that we have to address that 10 years ago probably wasn't in an estate plan, I'm imagining.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We got through all of them. That's excellent information. Lynn, thanks so much. All things important to keep in mind. All right, up next we're going to be talking about how the rising cost of health care may actually be affecting your retirement benefits at work. Stay tuned, there's more to come here on The Money Pros. Welcome back to The Money Pros. Another survey out by another consulting firm that I wanted to share with you, and this one is done by a firm called Willis Towers Watson, and they're a benefits consulting firm. So they examine the corporate benefits that employers, typically large employers, offer to their employees. And it brings up some interesting questions. We've talked about on the show before the decline in the corporate retirement plan universe. I mean, there was a time perhaps 20, 30 years ago where it was very common that large employers and even medium and small size employers would offer what we would refer to as a pension, where you would retire from work and you would be guaranteed a certain amount of income for the remainder of your life. And the employer took the responsibility for making sure that happened. Another important employee benefit that's always been in place is getting health insurance through your employer. But what we're seeing is there's a decline in the retirement benefits that are being offered to employees. The traditional pension that we just described is going away for most, if not all people. It's being replaced by the 401k and the requirement that employees put away a lot more of their own money in order to fund their retirement. So we've talked about that before, but it raises an interesting question. Is the rising cost of health insurance one of the reasons why employers are spending less on retirement benefits? So let's talk about the Willis Towers Watson survey and some changes in employee benefit spending between 2001 and 2015. So we'll throw up that slide. And the first thing that the survey reveals is that retirement benefit spending, so spending on retirement benefits like pensions, 401ks, things along those lines, is actually down 2.8% from 2001 to 2015. So a decade and a half, there has been a decline in retirement benefit spending. Employers are spending less on retirement benefits. Next, medical benefit spending is up 5.8%. So employers are spending 5.8% more of an employee paycheck on medical benefit spending than they were a decade and a half ago. And then finally, medical benefits account for 63% of all benefit spending done for employees. So if you think about an employer, they have X amount of money they can spend on their employees, and they have to make decisions about where that's going to go. Some of it's going to go into take-home pay, but much of it, or a big chunk of it, will also go toward benefits. So the question is, as employers are seeing their health care costs rising, and there's no question that there's a significant rise, are they spending less on other areas like retirement benefits? Retirement benefits 2001 represented 9.1% of worker pay. In 2015, it only represents 6.8% of worker pay. Meanwhile, medical benefits now constitute 11.5% of compensation in 2015. It was 5.7% in 2001. one. The other reason for this, in addition to the rising cost of healthcare, is the fact that younger workers place more of a priority on medical benefits in their pay package than they do on retirement benefits. So that's also a shift. So interesting question. You follow healthcare costs and the debate going on in the country. It's impacting a lot of things, maybe impacting the retirement benefits you receive at your workplace. All right, up next we're going to cover a question from a viewer on home equity lines of credit, so stay tuned. There's more to come. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Money Pros. Just enough time for a viewer question. We have a viewer that writes in and asks the following. I'm refinancing my mortgage and the bank is asking if I also want a home equity line of credit. I've never had one before and wondering if it's a good idea. So my answer to this question is it depends on who's asking. This is one of those things where if you're good with credit and you use credit responsibly and do not borrow to extend your lifestyle, then a line of credit is actually a great thing to have. And if you're taking out a traditional mortgage right now, you probably get the line of credit and it's not a lot of extra work. You don't have to supply all the paperwork over again and things like that. So it can be a great emergency fund. I just urge caution in not using it as a piggy bank for taking out money to pay for things that you couldn't otherwise afford. So that's my caution. And for those of you that have a question for the Money Pros, feel free to email me, moneypros@foxprovidence.com. You can also chase us down on Facebook. Look for the Money Pros Facebook page. We answer all the questions, even if we don't actually answer them on the air, but we'll answer all of your questions, and in some cases I even pull our pros in to make sure that we get you the correct answer. So we encourage you to ask us questions. We love to get them, and again, we will answer all of them, whether it's via email, Facebook, or live on the air in the case of this viewer. So thanks again for watching, folks. We'll see you again back here next time, next Sunday, right here on the Money Pros. Have a great weekend. Take care.